It's fast, reasonably affordable, and even has some fascinating characteristics that make this one of the most unique Mustang GTs ever built. Welcome back, guys, or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and that's the 2024 Mustang GT, and it's been refreshed. It's a completely new generation for 2024, so today I get to share the good, the bad, and the ugly of this dark matter gray metallic Mustang GT Premium to help you guys at home decide if this might be the right performance car or pony car for you. So you can expect to see a walk around, all the specs, initial driving impressions, 0 to 60 on GPS, and then my final thoughts to help you decide what do you do with the brand new Mustang GT, chassis code the S650, and huge thanks to Goody Motor for letting me borrow theirs for the day. I'm going to link it below if you're interested. They're the Ford dealership in Burley, Idaho. Big thanks to them, and let's dive right in with this review. And if you guys like the Mustang, the color gray, or my video, please consider liking my video. That act of kindness actually goes a long way in helping me know you want to see more stuff like this, but also helping YouTube know to show you more stuff like this. Thank you, guys. But if you're new to the Mustang nameplate, you really need to know that these first came out almost 60 years ago, back in 1965, and they were a slam dunk when they first came out because Ford sold 400,000 in the first model year. Honestly, at $2,400 for the base MSRP, can you blame them for being a high seller? In today's money, that is about tenfold, or in the mid $20,000 park, so a little bit cheaper than you can actually acquire a new Mustang today, but still not bad. And in fact, by 2018, Ford had sold over 10 million Mustangs. But this one, this is why we're here today. This is a 2024, so it's the 59th year of the Mustang, and there's a lot to talk about. This is the 7th generation, nicknamed the S650, which is really just an exaggeration, a refresh, a redesign off of the last generation from 2015 to 2023, which was nicknamed the S550. So let's get right into it because there is a lot to talk about. What makes the S650 basically the last pony car, the last V8 muscle car that you can buy in North America. That's something to talk about. I don't usually do this, but I do want to do a quick just walk around of the car before I get into more specs and the features and just show you guys exactly what's going on here. This dark matter gray paint, honestly, in my opinion, doesn't look a whole lot different than the other metallic gray paints from Mustangs and Ford products of the past. But up front, you have a functional heat extractor. You can actually put your fingers through there, and it's pretty cool. You also have these really nice LED headlights, and even the daytime running lights or the turn signals sweep across just like the back has for a little while on the Mustang. Although I think this is mostly non-functional, maybe a little bit of air gets through here potentially, but it's so minimal you really can't even stick your fingers in it, so it's really not going to be that helpful for aerodynamics and coefficient of drag. But you have the dark pony, and you get the dark pony without this even being the dark horse, because there's a lot of different ways to get a dark pony. Anyways, upper and lower grille, it looks pretty cool. You can see the radiator back there. It's huge, you know, to cool down this hot engine. You do have the camera for some of your safety features in the Ford, next to the Ford nameplate up there, that little emblem sticker. And honestly, nothing really new on this side. Of course, you have to have the front fender reflector. The wheels are 19-inch. I'll show you more of that later. The side profile, though, looks just like the S550. There's honestly not much that has changed with this one, but the rear does look a little bit different. You still have the triple taillights, and instead of the 18 to 23s, how they were kind of arced out, these ones are now more concave and they're arced in. And in person, that actually looks pretty dramatic, pretty interesting, and it's kind of growing on me. I didn't know how I felt about that at first, but it is kind of cool, and they also sweep as they should. And then you have, on this premium GT, dual exhaust. Reverse light down there, GT darked out as well, just like the pony badge up front. And honestly, the overall package, it looks pretty good. So although these aren't quite as affordable or selling the numbers that they did back in 1965, Ford is obviously doing well enough selling their Mustang that they can still justify it and justify a whole new generation of it, which I would anticipate we're going to be blessed with for at least the next 6 or 7 years based off of the previous generational runs. But the basic Mustang GT, the basic cheapest one you can buy, unless you get a good discount on it, MSRP's for about $31,000, and that's just a base EcoBoost motor with a 4-cylinder turbo engine. But this one, this is the GT, which starts at about $42,000. So ago are the days of getting a GT for under $30,000. Now, the cheapest one you can get is about $40,000. And then if you want the convertible version instead of the coupe, that's going to cost you about $5,000 to $8,000 more depending on configuration. But this GT Premium with the 10-speed automatic, MSRP is after tax, title, and destination a little bit closer to $54,000. And then Goody Motor has it discounted by almost $4,000, which from what I've seen online, that does look like a pretty dang decent deal. But a base Mustang GT, $50,000. There's no longer a Charger or a Challenger with a V8 for 2024, and the Camaro is going to disappear. It's going to go extinct after this year with the 6th generation Camaro as well. So this is now the last pony car. Does that mean it won? Does that mean it's the best one? Well, you're going to have to wait to find out, and you're going to have to form your own opinions. But I will say, it is pretty fun. It looks pretty cool, and there's a lot more to show you. And this new Mustang is fairly well sized and honestly basically the exact same as the last generation. It's about 15.8 feet long. The wheelbase is 8.9 feet. So it is pretty planted and pretty stable on the road when you're driving it appropriately and the rear's not sliding around. And then it's about 6.3 feet wide, 4.5 feet tall, so it has a nice stance and it honestly looks really aggressive in person. But it's not that small of a car. The Mustang weighs between 36 and 3,900 pounds depending on the engine, transmission, and overall interior configurations. So this with the automatic and the big 5-liter Coyote, it's probably pushing 3,900 pounds to be my best guess. And then the payload capacity is about 630 pounds. So you can carry 630 pounds worth of your favorite people and stuff in your Mustang between the passenger compartment and the trunk. And then there's a variety of final drive ratios between the automatic and the manual. There are as little as a 315, which puts the power down not as well because you're favoring MPG, up to a 355 automatic or a 373 if you go with the 6-speed manual. Honestly, I understand why people buy the 10-speed. It's fast. It shifts pretty well for a factory production transmission, and it's going to win the races. But the manual, you're going to be having probably just a little bit more fun if that's what you're into. Anyways, it has just over 5 inches of ground clearance, and it can do a full circle in 38 feet, which just for comparison, that's about 2 feet more than it takes a Subaru Forester to do a full circle. But still not bad for this size of vehicle. There are so many people that are die-hard Mustang fans, and honestly, they love them for good reason. There's a lot that they offer, there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of people who don't like them because it seems like everyone and their mom has one, especially when you know that 10 million of these have been produced. But whether you love it or you don't like it, or you're just trying to find out more information on it, there's seriously so much to talk about, and for that reason, I'm going to have a second video come out a few weeks later on this car that's an extended driving impressions video, another 0 to 60, and just more behind the driving wheel, in the driver's seat. What does it feel like? Because if you are going to spend 50 grand on a car like this, you really should have access to all the information to help you know the pros and the cons, and what other people who have driven a lot of cars experience, and you know what their thoughts are. So I'm glad to share that with you guys. But I do want to mention that Ford seriously did such a cool thing when they put the 5-liter Coyote and the 10-speed in this car. That's a really stout powertrain. Very reliable bone stock. Obviously, it has a 60,000-mile warranty. But there are people already Whipple supercharging the 2024 Mustang GT. And with some premium, maybe 93-octane fuel, they're getting almost 800 wheel horsepower out of this Coyote engine. On the factory block, the factory transmission, there's literally so much potential. There's so much that you can do with a platform like this. That huge thanks to Ford for letting this Mustang live and not taking it out to pasture and putting it down, because I think we're going to see a lot of crazy 7th generation Mustang builds in the months and the years to come. Just 3 last things to mention here, and then we'll get into the interior. But when you lock the vehicle, the gas door doesn't lock. So the bums can attempt to siphon some of your 87 octane 16 gallons of gas, which when you're only getting about 16 city, 24 on the highway, your max road tripping capacity is only about 384, which I do think for a vehicle this big, Ford engineers should have designed a slightly bigger gas tank, at least an 18 or 18 and a half. And then the wheels, it's a square stance. So you have a 255 wide, 40 sidewall 19, and you do have Brembo brakes up front, and honestly the black pony wheels, I do think they look really good. And then this is your key with unlock, lock, remote start, lift, the trunk, and panic button. But honestly, just leave that thing in your pocket because you do have the proximity key features to lock and unlock the Mustang right there. And when you open the door, the window drops down just slightly, which is typical of big sports cars and coupes. But look how huge that door panel is, which I mean, it needs to be to fit having a back seat on a coupe style vehicle. And then the door panel, it's mostly black, but thankfully it's a lot of soft touch materials. It doesn't feel very hard. The door car almost feels like leather right there. Kind of an interesting plasticky design right there, if you guys can see that. But it does have some texture, and it leads to the speaker. Another speaker down here, ventilation going through the air hole, as we like to call it, up through the top. And then you have a nice big handle. The armrest is actually adequately sized, but you have a very small snack pocket down here, which I wish that was extended, but maybe it's for safety regulations with the crash bar. At least that's what I'm telling myself, because otherwise, Ford engineers, why isn't that bigger? I have a lot of snacks to carry with me. And then you have Mustang on the door sill. You have cloth floor mats, rubberized dead pedal, and then aluminum rubberized gas and brake. Unfortunately, this doesn't have the third pedal. You can see the OBD2 port right there. And then you have some of your buttons, your light switches, your ventilation, a pony emblem, and then a turn signal stock right there. Otherwise, heated leather seats. They're really comfortable, and I like them a lot. I do think the Recaros would be fun, but that's going to be a little bit more of a premium on the premium performance pack, not just the premium GT. And sitting inside the new Mustang is honestly where I think the most changes happen and where it feels the most refreshed, the most refined compared to even the driving experience. But at 5'11", it's easy to find a comfortable position, and I think the Ford engineers really did a good job designing this, and I especially like the ventilation right there to keep the mirrors from fogging up. But the wheel, it's leather wrapped, it's a flat bottom, it is heated through the infotainment screen, and then you have adaptive cruise settings and your buttons to control the center display and go through your different sport modes, track mode, drag strip mode, stuff like that. You have voice and volume controls on the right of the wheel, paddle shifters for the 10-speed on the back, and the horn. It's from the Ford parts bin. Are you surprised? Doesn't sound like it needs any adjustment, though. It's loud enough. And speaking of loudness, let's hear the start. It's actually a warm start. I've been driving the vehicle quite a bit recently, so still sounds good, though, and it would only be louder if it was a cold start. But here is that exhaust. And then going through just a few of the buttons, the displays, you actually have access to quite a bit of information. But what I don't like, what's causing a problem right now, is the ventilation is on full blast. And how long is it going to take the screen to turn on, if you guys saw that? So although I do think the screen is cool, it's, there's all of your controls, your heated wheel, your heated seats for you in the passenger. You do have dual climate controls, but it's all controlled through the screen. And it's honestly, I want to say nice things about it, but it's not overly fast, but it's fine. I can't complain too much. It's just one of those things where I think you're going to use a lot of Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Otherwise, you have more of that kind of textured plastic theme throughout the vehicle. Start, stop, and red, USB and C, wireless charging, 12 volt, a few extra options I hear. You're missing one button. I wonder what that would be on a fancier trim level. Volume control. You can go down to reverse, and here's your backup camera, which is actually really nice. The clarity feels like it's really good up close, and then things in the distance are a little bit more grainy, but honestly, it does such a good job. And then you can get down to manual mode, play musical gears with the paddle shifters if you want. Kind of an awkwardly placed electronic parking brake right there, just under your hand when it's resting. And then some cup holders, and again, kind of an awkward center console. Obviously, the transmission is right here, so the Ford engineers have to do what they do, which probably put the center console after you get to the drive shaft underneath the vehicle, but you have a 12 volt, you have an incandescent light. It's just really far back. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot up top with the mirror, garage door openings. You have lights, and they are LED. That's cool. And then, do we have lights in here? We do, incandescence. Does it slide? Yes, it does. Pretty cool. Whoop. There we go. And with that said, let's turn it off, and maybe I'll hop in the back. This is probably going to be the least comfortable thing that I do all day. But to get into the back seat, this handle drops the seat forward. There's also an escape button on the back of the seat, but I am going to move it forward, as any good driver should do, who's taking care of the people in the back seats when they're being chauffeured around, and then see if the seat falls forward. And it does, but the belt does catch it. You can maybe unbuckle that right there, but that might actually just be for looks. And then jumping into the back, it's very, very tight. And then I've already tried this because I thought I was filming it a second ago, but you can't just pull the seat back with one hand. It's a two-person or a two-hand job. And this is what you have to work with. A very small window. A very hard armrest over the wheel well, basically. This is the knee room you'd have if you were sitting back with the seat reclined how it should be, which at least it's comfortable because your knees are going to be about 2 inches into there. Absolutely no room right there, which is why this is a coupe and, a four-seater, not a five-seater. But honestly, and you do even have the child safety tethers and the speakers back there. But honestly, these leather seats are actually really comfortable. So I do think Ford did a lot with what they had to work with. Obviously, the plastic interior trim is to save money. You even have a spot to hang up, some clothes with your hanger. But you're not going to be comfortable back here if your legs are any bigger than that, maybe any bigger than those of an 8-year-old's. I don't think you're going to want to be in the back seat of this new Mustang. And with that said, I'm feeling kind of claustrophobic because I'm actually having to keep my head bent down to about the angle that you see through the camera right now because, of the sloping roof line. There's just no room for your head. And with that said, and yeah, look at that. So you have a lot of room down there, but in the back, that's not going to feel very good hitting your head on the window. So I'm going to hop out and I'm going to show you the trunk. The back of this new Mustang GT is probably the view that the most people are going to see. So thankfully Ford did a good job designing it. But there's about 3 main ways to get into the back cargo area. You can either push the button that's on the dashboard. You can use the button that's underneath the GT emblem down there. Or just do the laziest of all and use the remote, double press, and it unlocks. There are struts that help lift it up. But you have about 13.3 cubic feet in the coupe and closer to 10 if you're in the convertible. It does look like those seats can fall forward. You do have a subwoofer back here, which isn't name brand. It's not advertised, and you can easily see where the hardware is. It's not hidden at all to make it look better, but hey, it's going to sound really good. And then you have that much extra storage on the driver's side. And you even have a temporary spare down here because so many coupes, so many sports cars these days just give you the bottle of a fix-a-flat kit and wish you the best, but this actually has all the tools underneath the steel spare wheel, and that's pretty cool. So although you actually have a pretty big trunk on the coupe Mustang, you even have an escape handle up here. So don't try to kidnap anyone because they're going to use that latch to free themselves. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to lower the trunk, and you'll notice that you do have just a subtle little painted spoiler on the back, which I do think is pretty nice. But if you get a ride shotgun, notice you still have the proximity key features there to lock and unlock, and they actually are pretty responsive on this Mustang. The door panel, though, it's all the same materials. You lose a few of the extra controls because as the passenger, you don't need them. Mustang on the door sill, you have fewer power controls. It is still a heated seat, and it's bolstered pretty well. There's actually quite a few safety features on the Mustang. One of my favorite is blind spot monitoring. But honestly, the backpack's happy, so I'm happy. There's no storage on the side of the transmission tunnel or above the glove box, but you do have kind of an iconic design listing Mustang up here. And then you have a key to lock it with, the key that's hidden in your remote. When you lower it down, it's adequately sized, but there's no plugins back here. So that's unfortunate. But let's come around to the front. I'm going to pop the hood, and I'll show you exactly what the 5-liter Coyote Mustang looks like. Under the hood, you have 5 liters of displacement, or 302 cubic inches, but you'll notice that this brand new 2024 Mustang now has dual intakes, dual throttle bodies, and that's how it makes a little bit more horsepower. So this one actually makes about 480 at the peak, and that peaks at about 7,100 RPM, so you really have to rev out your Mustang to get to its peak power, and then its torque is 415, and you even have to rev it out for that, and that comes on at about 4,900 RPM. But this engine is massive. Notice physically how large it is beyond the silly engine cover, which does look pretty good. But look at how massive it is. In the engine bay, there's hardly any room. I honestly can't even see the factory exhaust manifolds, at least on the passenger side. And I can hardly see them right there on the driver's side because it's a huge engine. With the over-valve dual-cam drivetrain, it just makes the V that much bigger, basically. But Ford, you did good designing this. All of your reservoirs are right up top. Your air filter. Batteries hidden away under here. The fuse box is right here. You have the front strut towers, everything like that. But overall, I mean, you can at least identify a lot on here. The serpentine belt, it's right up front, but you might have to move a lot of the air induction out of the way to actually change your belt out. But it's a Coyote. Whatever maintenance you do, that's probably a good time to modify it and make it even better. And with that said, let's drop the hood and take it for a drive. Initial driving impressions of the 24 Mustang GT. It rips, and when it upshifts, it honestly loses a little bit of traction in the rear, and that's right now with traction control on. So this definitely feels like a Mustang because it's powerful. There's a big V8 up front, the rear can get a little bit squiggly at times, and overall you feel like you're enclosed in a pretty decent vehicle, a pretty good touring car, or grand touring car. I should say though, the visibility, it's not quite as good as I feel like I remember from the S550s, although this is basically the same body in a lot of ways, so maybe that's just my mind, my memory, not recollecting it. But the windows, you can see out a little bit. The side mirrors though, that's my bigger complaint. Because they're sporty and they're very horizontally designed rather than vertically, you can't see a whole lot outside of just a little bit more to the side. But overall, you're having a good time. You're in a vehicle that's not overly long, so the rear view mirror, even though it's not digital on this one, it still does a really good job. The backpack's having a good time, and these premium leather-wrapped seats, although they're not Recaros, they're still holding us in place fairly appropriately. But let's see how it does coming to a stop right here. Maybe half pedal. Oh, super easy. I don't know if there would be fade on a track, but just normal driving, very adequate. Right back to speed. That wasn't full throttle, that was just riding out the gear. And this seriously feels and sounds like such a healthy 5-liter Coyote engine. It doesn't surprise me at how fast it is, and I think a lot of that is because the body is so stable and there's so many electronic aids to really keep the feeling numb. Even though you do get the rear end a little bit loose, and even with traction control on, it does spin out going into the first couple upshifts. It just feels way more planted, way more stable, and overall very refined for what a Mustang is. Ever since they lost the solid rear axle almost 10 years ago now, these have been much less likely to spin out. They're much easier to control, and I think a lot of people are going to like that, because for most people, their Mustang or their Mustang GT isn't their dedicated track car, so you want something that's manageable and, easy to deal with on the streets. I do want to say that the speakers in this sound very good. The glass in the whole cabin feels quite well insulated, so I don't have a lot of noise protrusion. And overall, the ride, the comfort, it's really nice. I drove over some railroad tracks and lots of bumps and ruts in the road to get out into the country today for you guys. And this feels very smooth. Even in drag strip mode, it feels a lot less bumpy than even, say, my 23 Miata Club. It just feels like it does a really good job of feeling the road, giving you a little bit of sensation, but not being overly aggressive. It's not like a 1LE track mode Camaro. This is just a grand touring cruiser V8 muscle car with 480 horsepower, and it does a really good job at that. But with that said, let's get to the private road and do a 0 to 60. 0 to 60 in the Mustang GT. I have it in drag strip mode, brake rev, and I'm actually going to leave traction control turned on because after a few off-camera test runs, it was actually fastest with that combination, not having any wheel spin rather than trying to modulate wheel spin. So let me show you what it can do. Lots of wheel spin, and true 0 to 60 came in at 4.98. Final thoughts of the 2024 Mustang GT is it's about what I expected. It's a really good performance car. It does get a little bit squirrely in the rear, especially when you give it a lot of gas, and if traction control is turned off, you do need to be careful. You do need to be watchful of where you're going and keeping the wheel straight, because over 400 horse and torque, that's a lot of power. And even though this is a fairly sized car at about 3,800 pounds, it still has a lot of power to kick out the rear. Doing true 0 to 60s in about 5 seconds in the high 4s without rollout, at over a mile above sea level on a, gravel road basically, that's pretty impressive. But what's most impressive is the decision that Ford had to keep the Mustang and not to terminate it, outside of the old supercharged context, but to not eliminate it like they probably considered, like they probably thought of with Dodge and Chevy. Do we just join the bandwagon? Do we just disappear our favorite muscle car that's been around since 1965? The first one of all those muscle cars? No! Heck no, Ford said. They said, we're going to keep making V8 Mustangs. We'll make some EVs and some hybrid vehicles to compensate for it. But the Mustang, for now, thankfully is not going anywhere, and I praise Ford for making that happen. I think a lot of us are going to be happy with that decision, although it's, we already saw more Mustangs than any other pony car throughout history, and I wish there was more competition. I hope GM, their performance division, and Dodge, Tim Kaniski, I hope they decide to bring back something cool, something to actually compete with the Mustang, because without competition, rivalry doesn't make things better. Rivalry lets you be able to maintain just to sit on the couch, be lazy, eat potato chips, because without competition, without a reason, a motivation to do better, to perform better, what's the point? And honestly, in 2024, after 59 years of Mustangs, I do think that this one performs exceptionally well. And if Henry Ford could see what the Mustang turned out to be, I think he'd be very impressed. And with that said, guys, what ultimately matters is your thoughts, your opinions, and your preferences. So do you guys like the Mustang? Like this video if you do. Do you guys want to buy one? Have you owned one? Does your mom have one? Comment that below. I'm interested about all that information. And remember, this one I'm going to link before from Goody Motor Ford. Great dealership. I highly recommend them. And otherwise, I hope to see you on the next one. Until then, take care.